and welcome to Art Equals Life. I'm your host, JT Dubs.
And I'm co-host Moose.
How you doing today, Moose?
I'm doing okay. Yeah, I'm doing pretty good considering that it's almost 8:40 at night.
Yeah, we do tend to record pretty late. Even when we try to get started early, we never get started early. So, it's been a couple months since we've recorded. We've both been super busy. But, it's interesting. It's been a while since we recorded last, like probably a few months, but so much has happened. I mean, so much just in the whole media sphere has kind of been going on. A lot of outrage. People just like to get mad about movies and TV shows now. Like, it just to me seems like no matter what, people are always going to be mad about whatever show or movie is coming out.
Most definitely. I think we last recorded May, or no, June, because the Obi-Wan episode came out in July, right?
Yeah, we recorded right after Obi-Wan finished, which it's funny because now in my opinion we have a better Star Wars show than Obi-Wan Kenobi, so I feel like I was way too easy on that show, but I don't need to rehash it. Yeah, I think in general though, like there's just been so much backlash. So, bouncing off of Star Wars, there's this new Andor show, which I think is pretty good. It's kind of a slow burn. It's definitely a very different tone from like previous Star Wars shows. But overall, man, I don't know. Like it's definitely doing something kind of edgy and new with Star Wars that we just haven't seen since like Rogue One. And I don't know. Like I'm all for it. I'm all for them doing something different and not repeating like well, we'll get into the theme of today's episode, not pandering to nostalgia constantly. Have you been able to check out Andor at all?
Oh, no, not yet. My husband and I, we've been juggling three shows here recently. She-Hulk came out, which so far my absolute favorite Marvel series TV show wise that they came out with, other than Loki. Um, then House of Dragons came out, and so we've been watching that. I haven't started Rings of Power yet, but he has. Most definitely need to watch that. He's showing me Game of Thrones, so I can kind of have an idea of the prequel that they've made. The House of Dragons. But I do want to watch Andor because I really liked Rogue One.
Yeah, it's interesting though you bring up She-Hulk and Rings of Power, and like those two shows specifically are good examples of things that people have been like freaking out about. It's like with Andor, it's like people don't like it because it doesn't feel like Star Wars, it's too boring, whatever. Then with She-Hulk, people freaking out, like it's too woke, too stupid, I don't know, and then with Rings of Power, it's kind of the same thing. Oh, it's boring, or it's too slow, or there's some people are racist about it. They don't like that there's black people in it. Like, it's just like, man, do you remember back when it seems like people used to enjoy things more? Like it just, I mean, don't get me wrong. I have complaints and criticisms of things that come out now. I mean, I've also been watching She-Hulk, and it's kind of grown on me. I didn't really like it at first. At first, I just thought it was really cheap and lazy, and I didn't really like the writing all that much. But I'll say as it's gone on, it's gotten funnier, and I've definitely grown to enjoy it more. I think it's different from the other Marvel stuff, but it definitely fits in the format of a TV show better than most of the other Marvel shows have. So I guess it's got that going for it. But, even when I wasn't really digging it that much, I wasn't like online complaining about it. Like, it's like you go on any kind of fan forum or Reddit or Facebook comment section or Instagram comment section, YouTube comment section. It's like all people do is complain and fight with each other. And I don't know. I feel like the worst of it lately has been the Little Mermaid reaction. Have you seen some of that, Moose?
I've seen it. It's absolutely ridiculous. I've never rolled my eyes more into the back of my skull over people freaking out because the Little Mermaid is black. It's absolutely ridiculous. I think, what's her name? Halle Bailey, right? Yeah, Halle Bailey. Um, yeah, I think she's gonna do a phenomenal job. She's beautiful.
Well, and I mean, I don't know. It's just like of all the things to get upset about, I don't get it. Like the thing I posted after everybody freaked out was all I said was just like the majority of people that are complaining about this are probably not going to see the movie either way.
Not to get off the topic of the Little Mermaid, but back on topic of She-Hulk. People were also mad. Like Redditors were really mad about the fact that she breaks the fourth wall. And they're like, oh my god, dude, that's like Deadpool's thing. And they're like attacking her. They're being sexist. Like, they're attacking her for the fact that she's a woman. Like, there was someone that I was friends with that I'm no longer friends with, literally because of how upset he was over the fact that She-Hulk is a woman.
Wouldn't it be weirder if She-Hulk was a man, given the name She-Hulk? Like,
Then people would freak out because, they'd be like, oh, transgender?
be like, that's trans Hulk? Yeah.
Yeah, right. People literally nowadays just want to be upset over anything. You could tell them that the sky is blue and they'll get mad and tell you the sky is purple.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but at the same time, it's like, do you have to have an opinion on literally everything at all times? Like, especially with these Disney live action remakes, which, like, I don't know. I feel like most of the people that are in, like, the demographic that are complaining about it, like, I feel like they don't care about these remakes anyway. I mean, because a lot of them, I guess, are like people my age or whatever. I mean, I don't care about these remakes. I probably won't see The Little Mermaid. If I see it, it'll probably be like just to spite those people, honestly, because nothing against the girl playing Little Mermaid, but I'm not really into these Disney live action remakes. I liked the Jungle Book one, but the rest of them have kind of sucked. So I kind of steer clear of them because I just feel like they're a cash grab. But
Oh yeah, the Beauty and the Beast one was
and the
absolutely
Lion King
awful.
one was even worse. I mean, and then I didn't watch the Pinocchio one, but that one looked awful. I mean, just like if anything, maybe this Little Mermaid one will be better because they're willing to do something new with it and change it up a little bit. So I mean, like I said, I might check it out just to spite those people, just because this one has a little bit of an interesting conversation going around about it. But yeah, I don't know. They're pretty lazy remakes, but the issue with them is not diverse casting. It is just being creatively bankrupt, honestly. Welcoming back to the podcast, the third co-host, JoJo.
It's like her second appearance.
JoJo, you've been out for a while. You only get so many sick days. So what's your excuse, JoJo?
She's sick right now. I'll give her that one.
Okay. So she actually is using up the sick days then. Because here at Articles
Yeah.
Life, you only get to not appear for 2 episodes, and then you kind of have to make a comeback.
Yeah, was that funny?
She's like, no, he's not funny.
Can you not grab Mama's mic? Thank you.
So Moose, we've been talking a lot about things that have been getting, sort of poor reactions, but something that I feel like has gotten pretty good reaction. So recently there was a Nintendo Direct, and there was the latest trailer for the new Zelda game, and overall it's been pretty well received. So, you just watched it. What's your thoughts on it, Moose?
You remember that talk you and I had about how I feel like every video game is exactly the same now?
Yep, I think we've talked about it. You and I do like to bitch about video games a lot.
Okay, well, I'm gonna bitch. Not to be one of those kinds of people, but literally watching the trailer, I just got majorly bummed because it just reminded me of every other game.
Okay. So you have a pretty different take, because most people have actually been pretty positive on it. Why do you think that it's, like, as you say, like any other game?
Maybe it's just from the snippet that I saw. I'll probably still buy it and play it just because of the fact that I love Zelda games. I still need to finish Breath of the Wild. But, like, okay, so a lot of the PlayStation games are the same. Like, all the Uncharted games are the same, of course. Horizon is just like Uncharted. And it was like when I watched the little trailer that they released for the new game,
Tears of the
it just
Kingdom, I think they're calling it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Tears of the Kingdom. It just reminded me of the same stuff we've been seeing for the past 5 years.
So I'm not sure of your opinion on Breath of the Wild, but I really liked Breath of the Wild. I felt like that was sort of the perfect Zelda game at the perfect time because the series had gotten so linear up until that point. Like it was, because Zelda, I mean, originally on the NES was like a pretty open game for an NES game. Like you could kind of do a lot, like you had a lot of freedom. You could do whatever you want in your own order, pretty much. And then as the games went on, they got more and more structured, more and more linear, more and more kind of rigid in their structure. And I don't know. The biggest issue with Breath of the Wild is that the dungeons are nothing special. Like they're just kind of boring, for lack of a better word. I don't really like the dungeons in that game or the bosses in the dungeons, but the little shrines were really cool. Those were cool little puzzles, and the open world was fantastic. It just felt like the story was bare bones, the dungeons were bare bones, and the things that were good in previous Zelda games were not focused on very much, but the new stuff, the open world stuff, the different abilities, all of that was awesome in my opinion. And I just love going into that game and just messing around and running around and just sort of living in that world. So what did you think of Breath of the Wild when you played it?
So I never finished Breath of the Wild. Um, I don't even think I I don't think I finished past the first boss.
So you didn't get very far in it at all then.
Correct. So, my opinion on it isn't really what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say entitled. What, baby? Yeah, you want to put an input in it?
Yeah, JoJo's actually
Jo-
saying that she really loved Breath of the Wild and she thinks that, you just didn't give it a chance, Moose.
Yeah. And I will. I do, however, from what I do remember, the game looked beautiful. The open world, like you said, was fantastic. The dungeon that I did play, I do remember how easy it was, and I was shocked from that, just from playing like Ocarina of Time.
Oh, yeah.
But I have it on my Switch, and since I played Ocarina of Time, I might as well just go ahead and re-download Breath of the Wild and play it, and then I can give you an opinion. I know that doesn't help me now, but
Yeah, and I think Tears of the Kingdom is going to be more of the same with Breath of the Wild. I do think there's been some hints that, there's these 7 tiers that are kind of shown in the hieroglyphics in the game, in that trailer. And a lot of people are saying that that's probably a hint that they're going to have 7 dungeons or something. And I, playing through Ocarina for this podcast, one thing I really enjoyed was, oh yeah, like it's cool to go back and remember, oh yeah, Zelda games had good dungeons. Like I think the problem the Zelda franchise has right now is it really has 2 different fan bases and it's like kind of at war with itself. It's like there is the more traditional Zelda fan base that wants the set items that you get in a certain order and that you get to do the dungeons in a certain order and it's got a deeper story and like games that are more similar to Ocarina. That's what a lot of people want.
right.
But then there's also sort of the newer fans, and I'm kind of in between, but there's like these newer fans that like the open world of Breath of the Wild. They like getting to play around in the world, getting to experiment with the physics system. And I really think that if the Zelda team wants to be smart, they need to combine the 2 styles because I think the overworld should absolutely be open world. I think they should let you have a lot of freedom with what order you do things. I think they should let you experiment. I think they should have a ton of little secrets around the world and not hold your hand and not keep it linear. But at the same time, I think they got to give you a better story. They got to give you way better dungeons than what Breath of the Wild offered. Those dungeons were kind of a joke. And I think, I don't know, we'll see what happens. This new game really could bring it all together. We just have to wait and see what happens. Because we really don't know much about the game other than the title, a couple little clips we've gotten of the story, and a bunch of little clips of Link flying around in the sky. So we'll see what happens with that. But speaking of Zelda, you and I played a little game that is 24 years old, almost as old as me. Is it older than you?
It is actually, I just looked it up. It is actually 29 days younger than me.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think Mario 64 came out the same month I was born. So you and I were both born in the N64 days. But yeah, so this game, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, it's, to say the least, a pretty, would you say a well liked game by the gaming community?
Yeah, oh, dude, I loved it. I thought it was absolutely fantastic.
Well, I sarcastically asked that because everybody always game journalists always listed as like number one greatest game of all time, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. And I don't think it's the greatest game of all time, but it's great. I can see why some people would say it's the greatest game of all time because there is a lot to love about this game. Moose, why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit about your experience first before I go into it?
With the Ocarina of Time, I really enjoyed playing this game. You know, it brought back a lot of memories from just being a kid and sitting around with my older brother. And I never beat the game back then. So when I beat it as an adult with my husband, it was crazy because it was almost like a sense of accomplishment that I got to achieve that I never did as a child.
So you actually just beat it for the first time this week?
Yes.
It's funny. I have the similar experience. I played it a little bit as a kid. The furthest I ever got was Jabu Jabu's Belly as a kid, and then I put it down and I was like, this shit is too hard. I don't know what I'm doing, and then I got a little older, got into like high school, maybe early college, and I got more into Zelda then. And I remember playing the 3DS version, and I think I got to like second or third to last dungeon, and I think I put it down again then. So this week, when I finished it for the podcast, this was also my first time beating it. So I agree, there is a sense of accomplishment in that. Describe that a little bit.
Well, I'm not about to just say spoilers. This movie is, or not this movie, I'm sorry. This game is almost 24 years old. When it came to defeating Ganondorf and then, him going into his second phase as Ganon, I know that really wasn't too much of a fight, but it was great to see the end credits rolling at the end of the game and just like feeling that like, holy crap, this is something that I wish I could have done a long time ago. For me, it was like, it was like basically it was kind of like the last piece of the puzzle was put in to complete the picture, if that makes any sense.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I grew up on the N64, and a lot of those games I did beat at the time, but this was definitely one that I never finished. And as a kid, I didn't get very far in it at all. And, I don't know. It's like Zelda is not, I would say by modern gaming standards, I don't think Zelda is as accessible as a series as a lot of other Nintendo games. I think especially that's why they went the direction they did with Breath of the Wild, because they wanted to give people more options to be more accessible. Because honestly, I'm going to be real here. I know this is like supposed to be a game for kids, but I don't think it's like a very easy game. I don't think it's super hard or anything, but
you gotta have a lot of patience with this game.
You have to have a lot of patience, and you have to do a lot of things a certain way. The items you got to use a certain way, and you got to have certain items at certain times. And there was one point in the game where I think there was an item I didn't have, and I needed it for a dungeon, so I had to like leave the dungeon just to go get the item and come back. And that was kind of frustrating. And as the game went on, I had to consult. I'll admit it, I'm a noob. I had to consult guides way more as it went on. Whereas at the beginning, I was doing fine without them. So yeah, you do kind of need some guidance on these because some of the secrets are a little cryptic and a little hard to figure out your first go around. Like now that I've beaten it all, I do feel like if I went back and played it again, I wouldn't really need the guide very much. But it's not an easy game, and it really does give you a sense of accomplishment. Like you really do feel like you grew up with Link. You know, you start off as a little kid with him, and then you become a man, and you take on all these challenges, and you finally beat Ganondorf, the big asshole guy that's been causing problems the whole game. And I mean, it really is pretty gratifying when you finish it. So, Moose, this was the first time you played the game in a while too, right?
Yes.
What were some things you noticed that you just liked about the game this time around, or things you noticed that you maybe didn't think about as a kid?
Um, the humor was very adult-like, in my opinion, and it was like things that I wouldn't have really picked up on as a child.
Yeah, I think something interesting about the game is it's just got a lot of personality, you know?
Right. Like for example, after you rescue, the king's daughter, I can't think of her name at this time.
Zelda?
She immediate No. I'm not talking about Zelda. I'm talking about when you go into Jabu Jabu's belly.
Oh, okay, the Zora King. I was like, you said the
Yeah.
king's daughter. I'm like, Princess Zelda?
No, no. I'm not that dumb, okay? No, I'm talking about Jabu Jabu. When you go into his belly to rescue King Zora's daughter, she gives you her medallion, and she's like, "Oh yeah, whoever I give this to is who I'm supposed to marry. See ya."
Oh yeah, Link just gets hit on by every chick in the game, pretty much.
Yeah, Micah and I, we were talking about how basically everyone but one person out of the six sages, um, all five of them, they were all like just down bad for Link.
Interestingly enough, though, something I've noticed in most of the Zelda games, Zelda herself doesn't really flirt with Link that much, even though we all kind of play the game and think oh yeah, man, Link's totally gonna tap that after he's done. We're all kind of hoping for Link that he gets with Zelda, but she doesn't really hit on him that much.
Zelda don't like him like that. Come on now.
Damn, we can't be having him and Mario be getting friend zoned by the princesses, man.
It's just how it goes.
Man, that's lame.
I know it, but that's the way that it goes.
Yup, it's true. The life of the hero. It's not a very rewarding experience. It's rewarding as the player, but you gotta imagine the shit he goes through.
Man's been through multiple games with the same objective at the end and never gets it.
Well, Skyward Sword, she's into him. They've got a romance in that game, so it's kind of, I don't know. Some games have it more than others, I guess. But, for me playing this game again, I got to say there was a lot I noticed this time around and a lot that I feel like I appreciated more coming back to it after all these years. I mean, it goes without saying, the soundtrack, the music is like a masterpiece.
Absolutely wonderful.
I mean,
Yeah.
the rest of the game is good. Don't get me wrong, but Koji Kondo just went ham on this soundtrack. He went wild. So many of the songs I think I had forgotten were from this game that I associate with Zelda, and a lot of them were tied to this game originally. And it's Zelda's always got good music. There hasn't been a single Zelda game that didn't have good music, but I really do think this one blows the rest of them out of the water. The rest of them have good, solid 9 out of 10 soundtracks or scores. This one is 12 out of 10. It's it's beyond perfect. Every song is a banger, and tying in the ocarina, tying that in to the gameplay and to the soundtrack, the music and the gameplay and the story are all three kind of interwoven through this ocarina. And that's something cool that I don't think I've ever seen in another game, where they take one mechanic and they utilize it so well to tie into like story, gameplay, and music. And it's like kind of amazing how they tied all three of those things together through that one mechanic, and it makes the whole game feel just so seamless. Like it's almost hard to think about, like after you play it you're like, wait, why do the other games not let me play an ocarina? Like it just feels so natural to, all right, I use this ocarina to unlock doors, I use it to fast travel, I use it to go back and forth in time. Like I know, I think they brought it back in Majora's Mask actually to go back in time, but I mean it's just it's such a great mechanic. And I mean, so many, like so much of the sound design, not just the music, the sound design is so iconic and video gamey. Like, you know, when you do a puzzle correctly and you get the little do 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 do, you know, that little jingle,
Yeah.
that's so satisfying. My favorite is like when you open up the big treasure chest and it's just going like da 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 da. Like, I mean, it's just so satisfying. Like I love video game sounds and music that like really just, it makes you feel like you're playing a game. And I'm not going to be like the whole, like, I'm not trying to be like cringe like the people that review the Spider-Man game that are like, it makes you feel like Spider-Man. Like, I'm not saying like it like that. It just, there's so much charm to those games from the 90s because they were working with like limited sound technology. They weren't able to make things sound realistic, and it's just cool that they were able to like make all these iconic sounds that now you listen to them and you don't even really necessarily think like, oh, that's from that game, that's from that. Like you just hear it and it's like, that's a video game sound. Like that's, it wouldn't appear in any other medium. So unless it's like Scott Pilgrim, I think that movie had some Zelda sound effects that showed up. But yeah, just great sound design overall. I love it.
My husband and I, whenever we first started playing the game, anytime we went somewhere and the music changed, we would just like start humming it, and we just looked at each other like we were meant to be together because we were just so in sync. And yeah, we our favorite is the Songs of Time, for the temple.
Yeah.
I That one is my absolute favorite. As soon as we went into the temple, we immediately, like without hesitation, started humming the song, and like it was just absolutely glorious. That's another thing that just felt so nostalgic was, like you said, just hearing the music. Using the ocarina, I felt was very clever. Uh, I really enjoyed how, like you said, how they made that a part of the game. Um, I feel like the reason why, I mean, I don't remember if they brought this back in Majora's Mask. Um, I've actually been thinking about playing that one next too.
I'm thinking about playing it too,
Um,
honestly.
yeah, after playing Ocarina of Time, we want to play now. But I think the reason why is because you know that saying like when something is good, there's no reason to fix it.
Yeah.
I feel like with Ocarina of Time, it was so good that they just kind of like wanted every other game to be different, and they just like didn't really want anything to touch it.
Well, all the Zelda, like the 3D Zelda games after this, they're all pretty gimmicky. And I don't say that as a derogatory term. I just say that as a literal term. Like, they're all gimmicky. Majora's Mask has the 3D gimmick. Wind Waker has the sailing. Twilight Princess has you turning into a dog, like, or wolf, sorry. So, I mean, there wasn't a single Zelda game after this that, like, just tried to, do the same thing or do something similar. Like, they all kind of try to do their own thing, and I think it's admirable. The Zelda team is very innovative, and some cool development facts I learned about the game when I was researching it was like, so when they first made this game, they were making it on the N64, which was using cartridges at the time. Cartridges were not, Nintendo's kind of ass backwards when it comes to their technology sometimes. Cartridges were not very good, even in the late 90s for data storage. So they were like pretty limited on the storage they had on the cartridges because they weren't using discs like Sony was. And so, they were debating at first. They thought they were going to put the whole game in Ganon's castle and do like make it like Mario 64 where you jump into the paintings and stuff. They actually considered doing that, and then they were able to thankfully kind of rework the game to where they made it more of, it's not really an open world game, but it does have a open area that you run around in throughout most of it, and different locations in that world. But that's crazy to me that they did that. And then, I mean, some other development history that I learned by watching a video too that was super interesting to me is the fact that when they were developing Z targeting, which is now considered like a pretty revolutionary thing because of the fact that 3D action games didn't really have that as an idea yet. They were, you run around, you fight things, but like there was no like targeting like there was in Ocarina. And they had the idea for Z targeting because even though the swords play in the Zelda games is based more off of like Western fantasy, they based a lot of the swordplay style off of watching a lot of samurai fights. And so they were watching the samurai fights. And I think they were watching, one of the developers was watching this like samurai performance. And in it, the protagonist was fighting off one bad guy at a time. And it was like sort of like the cliche in action movies when like one bad guy comes up and they fight that one like one at a time kind of deal. And obviously it's not realistic, but he got the idea by watching that, and he was like, oh, like he's fighting them one at a time. If we create the Z targeting, then you can target one enemy at a time, and you can like fight one and focus only on that one, and it'll kind of redirect you in that way. And I think that was a really good workaround because as we saw in like Mario 64 and a lot of the other games at the time, they hadn't quite figured out like a camera in a 3D like space. They just weren't really good at it yet. And the Z targeting is really cool because it helps Link to just focus on fighting one enemy at a time. And you can hit that Z button at any time and it will automatically shift the camera right behind you. So you don't need to like use a C stick because those didn't exist yet. But it's like you don't need to use that to move around the camera. You just put the camera right behind me. Hit Z. It does that. And so, I mean, for the limitations at the time, the game was absolutely very innovative. I do have some criticisms of the game, though. I'm not, I love Ocarina, but it's not my favorite Zelda game. I've actually always gravitated more towards the 2D Zeldas. I think just because I like, for a Zelda game, I like to have everything right in front of me. 2D Zelda, you can see everything at all times. You don't have to fight the camera. I think combat's a little easier because you just, have a little bit more free motion. And, with doing puzzles and dungeons, you can see the whole room at once. You don't have to look around and, look at it from different angles. Like, it's the 2D Zeldas I've always preferred. I really like Link to the Past and Link's Awakening and Link Between Worlds, especially on the 3DS. That one's great. So my criticisms of Ocarina of Time are probably just that, it can't help it. It was the first 3D Zelda game that ever existed, and it sort of wrote the book on the formula, and so I respect it a lot. But, there's definitely times where, like, something will hit you from off screen, and you had no idea where it came from. The bats, or as they're called in the game, the keys. Man, like, I hate those bats, dude. They just come out of nowhere and just smack the crap out of you. Like, the fire ones are, like, the worst. Oh, my God.
So which one was your favorite? The Legends of Zelda or Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link? Or did you like A Link to the Past?
Are you asking what my favorite 2D Zelda is?
Yes.
That would be Link Between Worlds on the 3DS. It's sort of overlooked a little bit. People don't really talk about that one a ton. But that one basically, it's the same world as Link to the Past. It's like a sequel to that game. But that game has a really cool mechanic because, actually a couple really cool mechanics. That game has this mechanic where you can turn into a painting on the wall and you can like run around and climb like through like walls and stuff in that game. So like you'll be running around the game in the typical like, over the top 2D Zelda, and then you'll merge to a wall and then it'll shift perspectives and you can run around on the wall and like you can go through cracks, and it's really cool, that game. And the other mechanic that's really cool about that one is they were experimenting. This was the one they made right before Breath of the Wild. They were experimenting a lot with sort of the open world idea. And that game, you can tackle most of the dungeons in any order you want. And the way they make that work is instead of collecting the items in the dungeons, you can rent or buy the items from a merchant in the game. And so, like, for example, if you really need the hammer for one dungeon, well, you can just go rent the hammer from a dude and go do that dungeon in that order. Or if you get enough rupees, eventually you just buy all the items, and then you can do any dungeon in any order because you have all the items. So that game's awesome. And Link's Awakening on the Switch, that remake they did, that one's great too. I mean, I'd recommend most of the 2D Zeldas. Like, they're really fun. They're not really as they don't have as good of story. They're not really as epic as the 3D ones are, I guess. But for me, I just love the gameplay of those. I just feel like they're a lot more fun to run around in and do puzzles and stuff. Well, Moose, I've loved talking about Ocarina of Time with you, but we have a quick commercial break. So when we come back, we will be discussing our theme of nostalgia. So we'll be right back.
The Playbox Series 5, the latest and greatest video game console that you need today. Experience lightning-fast loading with an ultra-high-speed SSD, deeper immersion with support for haptic feedback, adaptive triggers, and 3D audio. Playing games at a stunning 4K resolution at 60 frames per second, and other crap that only virgins care about. And it also plays remastered versions of all the same games you've been playing for the past 10 years. At double the price with no new exclusive games.
Whoa! The new X Station! I've been dying to get my hands on one. Only $349.95? Bodacious, dude!
Hey there, let me steer you over here into this direction towards the Playbox Series 5. Good quality stuff, I gotta say. It's bigger than that silly little X Station you're over there drooling on.
Wait, almost double the price? So you're telling me this thing is only $500? That's a major bummer, man.
That's right, a whopping $550.95. What a steal for this contraption, isn't it? And to try to sweeten the deal, if you buy it now, you can get on a 4-year waiting list just to be able to receive yours.
4 years? So you're telling me you don't even have any in the store right now? Eat my shorts. I think I'm just gonna stick with the X Station. The paid subscription service on that one is tubular, man.
Wait, I forgot to mention how with the Playbox, you literally can't find this bad boy anywhere. Come on, what do you say? You want to go ahead and give me all your cash right now? You can pay in stocks or savings bonds. We can even harvest your plasma if you'd like.
You're tripping if you think I'm buying that ish.
Look, please buy this Playbox. If I don't sell this thing and I lose my job, then my wife will leave me and my children will have to eat their own legs. Think about the children!
Good luck with that, dude. I'm gonna bounce. Excuse me. Can someone please help me get the X Station out of the locked shelf, please?
The Playbox Series 5, so good yet so horrible at the same time. Buy one and get it in 4 years. Unless you want to fuck up your credit and spend $40 a month for the rest of your life.
Welcome back. So, Moose, today our theme that we're talking about that sort of ties into Ocarina of Time is childhood nostalgia. So before we get into the idea of nostalgia and how it reflects in our day-to-day lives now, what about this game do you feel like represents that idea of nostalgia, especially like nostalgia for childhood?
For me, it would be just kind of like, remembering things that I was doing around the time that I first ever played this game. Just kind of remembering things, reminiscing on things, from my past, from when I was a littling. That kind of fits in the purity of what my life once was, before like school and in real life, and Yeah, it was just really nice to be able to kind of go back and see the way the game was as an adult, and being an adult and being like, dang, I remember when I first played this game, just how awesome I felt. Like, just how cool it was to me.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think you had a different experience than I did because, like I said, I never got very far in it as a kid, and I wasn't really super into Zelda. I was more into like platformers like Mario and Banjo Kazooie and stuff, and those were the games I was really good at. Zelda, I was not very good at as a kid, so I think I got to Jabu Jabu's belly and rage quit at that point. And I think I got into Zelda a lot more as I got older. I remember when I was in high school, I got the Wii U, which no one else bought, but I had the Wii U, and I had the Virtual Console on there, and I went back and I downloaded a bunch of the old Zelda games, and I really sort of took myself through like most of the series and played through most of the games. I didn't finish all of them because a lot of those games get to certain points where you're like, I don't care, I gotta stop. But they all were fun and unique in their own way. So for me, it was like I don't have like I have some nostalgia for this game, but it's not like Mario or Banjo Kazooie for me. Like those, I'm really nostalgic about. Those I could go back to and I would feel like a kid again. What was cool for me about this game, though, and this sort of created a new experience for me that I really enjoyed. I thought that the game itself communicated a theme of childhood nostalgia. And to me, that was what was interesting about it was like when I'm playing as Link as a kid, his adventures are very lighthearted. There's always kind of a happy ending. You know, his his adventures are really fun at the beginning of the game. The world of Hyrule, when you're young Link, is so vibrant and cool. And you go to the castle town, and there's all these shops, and there's all these people running around, and you go to the towns, and there's just like people that want to talk to you. You run around collecting chickens or sorry, cuckoos or cuckoos. I don't know. You collect chickens for this lady, and like all your little experiences are fun, and they really communicate the idea of just being a kid running around, outside and going on these little quests. And the gameplay definitely sort of like came across with this idea of, oh yeah, like I'm a kid running around and having fun and doing little quests and stuff. And then, you get to the portion of the game where you're transported 7 years in the future and you're an adult and everything sucks. Like, it's like the perfect metaphor for life.
It's because Ganondorf ruined everything. I mean, it really is. It really is a great metaphor for our life.
And I feel like, it's such a. This game specifically appeals a lot to 90s kids, I know, specifically. Or, the millennial generation, or maybe the older Gen Z folks, as you and I kind of are. And like, I don't know how other generations feel because I'm not part of other generations. Like I'm not a baby boomer. I'm not Gen X, whatever. But like this game is such a perfect metaphor for what I feel like the experience of a lot of millennials and Gen Zers is like, we had this fun childhood. We were growing up during a time where, maybe there was crap happening in the world, but we certainly weren't like worried about it. We were just out playing outside, having adventures, playing it with our friends, having fun. And, we just sort of were living in like a time that seemed really happy and really laid back. And then it's like we grew up and then the world, like it was always coming, but the world just suddenly, it became so obvious, like, that things are kind of a shithole and like things are not good right now. And like people are kind of bummed out by the world right now. And it kind of feels like Ganon came in and screwed everything up in a way,
Right.
And then, the world of the game, when Ganon takes over, everything gets dark, the people are either hiding or they're a lot less nice to you when you're an adult. And, the dungeons get a lot harder. It really does feel like everything was this like kind of perfect metaphor for being a child and growing up. And Link has 7 years of his life just kind of stolen from him because he, goes into the Temple of Time and basically comes out an adult. And, it's crazy because like he doesn't really get to grow up. It's sort of forced upon him. And, you could sort of say it's a little bit relevant because like none of us ever thought we were really going to grow up. And then it just kind of happened. And you're like, crap, where did the time go?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What I think was cool about the game too was that like young Link and adult Link, they are both two very distinct control styles. Like they both feel very different, but similar enough. Like I think what would have been a mistake that this game could have made was, because you spend more of the game as adult Link, they could have very easily made young Link not fun to play as because, you only play as young Link for a few hours of the game. Doesn't really matter. But I thought young Link was really fun to control, and I liked that, he could climb through the little openings on the ground and, the holes. I liked that he had sort of a few different weapons, like he used the slingshot instead of a bow and arrow. Like they make both versions of Link feel very appropriate for the age, but also very uniquely fun each. Like I don't prefer playing as one or the other. Like I guess some of the more options of adult Link are nice, but I felt like young Link was he was a little more fun in certain ways. Like just rolling around as him and running around as him, like was kind of, I don't know. He had a different kind of energy. I liked young Link too. So they were both pretty fun to play as.
Another thing that kind of goes along with the nostalgia is it's funny how, when you go back and forth between as adult Link and young Link, it just kind of reminds you of the things when you go back to young Link, you're like, oh, dang, I'm glad that I'm him because, like you said, you get to crawl through the holes and stuff like that. You're like, now I get to do things that I couldn't as an adult. Like I get to go back and relive these things as a child. So I think that's another thing that goes along with the nostalgia is when you're an adult, there are some things that you did as a kid that you just can't do anymore because you get older.
And I think it sort of this game kind of fulfills a fantasy we've all had where it's like, man, wouldn't it be great to just go back to being a kid just for like a day, the game really, I feel like excels in sort of that fantasy of like, well, you're an adult, but if you want to go do something as Kid Link, you can. And, just go back to the Temple of Time. And I liked the fact, I really enjoyed, because I didn't remember this because it had been so long since I'd played it, and I don't think I'd gotten this far, but like, you start off the game as young Link, and then you basically play most of the rest of the game as adult Link. But there were a few dungeons where you did have to go back and be young Link at certain points in them. And like that was really cool. I was glad that they really utilized the mechanic in the game. Like the game always feels to me like they got the most out of every mechanic. They got the most out of every little idea. Nothing felt half-assed. Like I think an issue with a lot of Zelda games is that you'll get certain items that you use like twice in the game, and then you're like, why? There's like certain mechanics in the game that'll just like you'll use a couple times and be like, what was the point of that? Like you didn't even need to put that in the game. But this game utilizes every little idea like just the right amount, just so you don't get tired of it, but you feel like you got a lot out of it. And by the time you finish, you really felt like you went on a journey. And the sort of theme of the game, they sort of hint at a little bit at the end was Zelda tells you, well, you've saved the world, we're going to send you back and you get to be a kid again. You're going to get those 7 years back. Like you get to go back to like Link doesn't have to live the rest of his life as the adult. He gets to have his time back. And, I mean, we definitely in real life will never get that time back. But I do feel like it kind of had a little bit of this theme and this idea of, don't waste your time. Like really like you want to appreciate those years that you have. And I mean, I'd say not just childhood, but any time in your life, you want to try to appreciate where you're at and really make the most of whatever phase of life you're in. I'm not going to touch on this too much, but I think as a culture, we need to kind of maybe chill out with the nostalgia a little bit because it really is infecting all of our media in like every single way. It's like we were talking about the Disney live action remakes. There's too many of them, you know, too many of these old IPs are being just milked to death for people's nostalgia. And like, to me, that just sort of shows like a society that is kind of not doing well. It's kind of bummed out and just like yearns for the past a bunch. And I don't think that's healthy. I think it's good to, you know, go back to these things occasionally. Like, I mean, you and I hadn't played this game in years, and we went back to it, and reliving that was a great experience. But I do think that just reliving nostalgia and just like, you know, using the member berries like from South Park, just remember Star Wars?
Oh, sure, I remember.
Remember Chewbacca?
Oh, yeah, I remember him. He's great. Oh, remember Star Trek?
Remember when things weren't so bad? Like,
Oh yeah, it's great. How the member berries, they just get like deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole.
you got to have some kind of excitement for the future. You know, even if it's things are hard, like some optimism for the future and wanting to make the future better is just, that's really important to a healthy society. And it definitely feels like right now we're not getting that.
And you know, not to be that negative Nancy, but I feel like one of the number one reasons why everyone keeps going back in time and why everyone is trying to be nostalgic is because the fact that they're trying to cover up just how bad things have gotten over the past few years and how nobody's doing anything to make it better. The fact that there's just so much going on right now, and it seems like all we are as a country is just like we're in high school. Everything is just drama, drama, drama. It's just like one bad thing after another just keeps happening. And they're trying to use nostalgia to cover it up, to try to make people, like, I guess, feel some sort of happiness, is because, like you said, instead of fixing what's going on now and, you know, being prepared and enjoying the future, you know, everyone just wants to keep going back in time, and that's not, you know, healthy. As you said, it's just, to me, with everything that's going on, I feel like there's not exactly any kind of acceptance. So I feel like that's another reason why nostalgia is a big part of today's society, is because the fact that nobody wants to accept that this is what we're dealing with right now. And instead of coming together, you know, and making it better, everyone has just got to be so negative about everything. Everyone has to argue about everything, about, you know, whether it be Little Mermaid's black.
Yeah, they're arguing Little Mermaid's black. I don't like that. She-Hulk. This isn't the Marvel that I know. This isn't the Marvel that I'm familiar with. If you don't like it, just, you don't have to watch it. Like, we can all grow up a little bit. It's fine to grow up in some ways. It's fine to find. It's okay to find new interests. You know, you can like other movies that aren't Marvel movies. You know, you can play video games that aren't the same games you played growing up. You know, you can evolve your political and religious beliefs to be different than how they were when you were growing up and your parents were telling you what to believe. Like, you're allowed to evolve and grow, and that's a beautiful part of human nature. And by obsessing over nostalgia and being stuck in the past and arguing with everybody about, this isn't my thing I grew up with, like, you're stunting your own development and you're becoming less mature. You're devolving. I know the world's not in a good place right now. I know that a lot of us don't feel optimistic. I know I don't feel the most optimistic these days, but, you know, the world is not necessarily worse now than it was 20 years ago. I know that might be a hot take. Things were not better when you were a kid. you were just young and the chemicals in your brain made you feel good all the time. It's like your first, like when your first love, when you are, a teenager or whatever, you have your first relationship and you're like in love with a person and you care about them so much. And it's like there's just this rush of emotion and you're like, I'll never love anyone like this again, and then, later on in life, you just kind of, you don't experience that same high again. And it's not that you can't love someone that much again, or you can't love that thing or have as much fun as you did back then. It's just your brain's different. We all get old and the way we enjoy things changes. And, the world was not great in the early 2000s. The world was not great in the late 90s. Your life was a little bit better because you were a kid with no responsibilities and you didn't know what was going on. I'm sure your parents don't think of that time as like, perfect by any means, because they were adults having to pay bills and stuff.
I feel like the reason why people are very nostalgic is also because they're in fear of change. I think that people are also in fear of having a balance in their life between trying a new interest or finding a new interest or doing something else and having their nostalgic moments. I feel like because of that fear people have, they decide to stay in the past because it's kind of like their safe zone. Like, for example, you talking about, that feeling you get when you have your first love and then you remember your very first heartbreak. So it's kind of like you put yourself in this stage of, oh, well, my first love, that was a great feeling, but now I've got this feeling of my first heartbreak and I never want to feel that feeling ever again. So I'm just going to stay here in this little bubble, and I can be comforted here. I can feel safe here, and I feel like that's something that is very common nowadays.
Yeah, I think it's very easy for people to get in their comfort zone. And I mean, I'm calling it out. I can't say that I'm, I'm completely innocent of doing those things as well. I just hope that, maybe with things right now being the way they are, maybe things have to get so bad in certain ways for people to wake up and realize, like, this isn't the way I want to live. And I feel like I've had a lot of those realizations recently where I'm like, why are you getting mad about a Marvel show? Why are you getting mad about Star Wars? Why are you getting mad about, why are you getting worked up about these dumb things? Why are you, and I think sometimes in life things do have to get kind of tough to really call you out on what's going wrong and your bad patterns. So, I think just going forward, I really do hope for people that, maybe they'll listen to podcasts like ours, or maybe they'll do some introspective thoughts of their own and, just, be willing to break the pattern. You might find something new and something better at the end of that journey. And, I think that's the best thing that we can do for ourselves. And also maybe just stop giving these corporations just like so much of our money just to keep recycling the same ideas over and over to us. It'd be good to at least make them work for our attention for once,
Yeah.
Well, Moose, that's been a very in-depth and very interesting discussion we just had on nostalgia. I feel like we got to really delve into some interesting things. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Oh, no, dude. I think I'm about to pass out on this computer desk, so... I think we've pretty much covered it all for as much as my brain can handle.
Well, let's give your brain a little bit of rest. And, just for anybody who doesn't know, Moose is expected to give birth to our next co-host sometime in the next couple months. So just want to wish you luck, Moose.
This month or next month.
Okay, awesome. Just want to wish you some luck, and I hope everything goes well. We'll be thinking of you.
Thank you, and I probably won't be in the next episode just because of that reason. So if you hear some other voices, just don't be sad. I'm still here. I haven't left. I gave birth to a child.
Yeah, we're going to give Moose a little vacation. And when we come back, you're going to hopefully feel good, feel a little rejuvenated. And, we'll have some more great content to give you guys. So thanks everybody for listening. I'm JT Dubs and I'm signing off.
And I'm Moose, and live long and prosper.
Peace out, biatches.
Dang, you just hit him with the biatches?
Yeah, I'm terrible.